I'm just going to bring it up so that anyone in the audience wants to be reminded what we talked about yesterday. Madam Chairman, if you're ready.
I'm ready.
Okay. The agency recommends that the Commission pass Proclamation 1708, which will amend the Sport Fishing Proclamation to allow us to open Chilhowie Reservoir to fishing upon notification from Brookfield Renewable that the dam has been fixed and their public access areas are open.
Okay. Madam Chairman, the Fisheries Committee has met, and we have voted to approve this proclamation.
Great. Thank you, Madam Chair. Got a motion from the committee and Commissioner King. Is there a second? Second from Commissioner Cook on passage of Proclamation 1708 related to sport fishing. Is there any discussion from members of the commission? Are there any comments or questions from members of the audience and members of the public? Are you ready to vote? All those in favor of Proclamation 1708, vote aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. You adopt. And now if you're not walking up there, so I can't read it while you're walking up there, but I have a little bit of formality to do. Sorry.
Prepared.
This is a rulemaking hearing before the Tennessee Fish and Wildlife Commission to consider amending Rule 1660-01-30, which deals with commercial fishing and wholesale fishing dealers. My name is Jamie Woodson, and I will conduct the hearing. The order of the proceedings is that the Tennessee Wildlife Resources Agency will present the information of the proposed rule. Full commission members will be permitted to comment and ask questions. Then members of the audience will be able to ask questions for clarifications. And then any staff or members of the audience wishing to speak will be recognized. And then, as you know, we've got limitations on debate, but I have a feeling we're going to be able to move efficiently through that. So with that, I'll recognize Frank Fiss. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. This first rule and the second rule we'll be talking about are heavily involved in just housekeeping issue. We have a lot of regulations that affect commercial fishing in this case, and a lot of them are currently found in the Proclamation 1641 in sections 2 and 5 to be specific. What we are asking to do is to essentially copy that information into a rule. It's more appropriate that these procedural types of things be put in rules, so we are going to make that migration, and this is the first step of that. The titles that will be moved or repeated again in rule are the first two on this bullet list here. They affect licenses and permits and report requirements. Now, there's no changes will be made to the lives of commercial fishermen because of this. It's the same information just being repeated in rule. The last part is a new rule. It doesn't affect anything old because it's brand new. And I want to take a little bit of time to discuss that. It is section 0.03, and it creates a mechanism for the agency to select a commercial resident row permit holder. We currently have a system where we want to have 40 row fishermen in the state. And last year, I believe it was 58 were sold, and now we see that we've dropped below our goal of 40. We only sold 49 last year, and we had no process in place to select that 40th person. So this is what this rule will do. The first step is that we have to acknowledge that we didn't sell 40 by March 15th. When that happens, we'll have to announce a drawing, but as I go through these bullets, these are how they're listed in the rule. Item 2 is that it's limited to residents only, that's not non-resident, and with those with valid commercial fishing licenses at the time of the drawing, and they should have had a license in the previous year for at least 6 months. We talked about this supplemental drawing with the Commercial Fishing Advisory Committee, and we really didn't have a strong preference either way about whether or not they had a license in the previous year or even the year they were asking for a row permit, but that committee did, and we heard them out and we agreed with their opinion, so that's why we've included this in the rule. This will limit the drawing to really serious commercial fishermen. The TWA will announce a live drawing for some date once we realize we have a license or permit to sale. It'll be a live drawing. People will have to come in person to purchase or to apply and then to participate in the drawing. And that person that's selected must purchase the permit within 1 hour. There were issues in other states that had a drawing for similar permits where people said, yo, yeah, I've won, I'm going to buy it, and they go off, and then they don't buy it. And then the administration is stuck with the problem of trying to sell that license again. So we want committed people to show up with money in hand to purchase this. And this again was supported by the Commercial Fishery Advisory Committee. So, and these permit holders, the people that are selected to buy this permit, like the people that currently hold this permit, are given priority. Each year, they are allowed to buy their license until they don't buy it. So if 39 people will have the opportunity to buy this license next year, and we'll certainly have one, if every one of those decide to buy a license, we'll only have one to sell. And by passing this rule now, we have a chance at making that license available at a meaningful time before the paddlefish season opens or shortly after, hopefully. That is the end of that rule. Any questions?
Commissioner Baker.
Thank you, Chairman Woodson. Frank, for example, a kid's grown up in the commercial fishing industry. He turns 18. His father's passed away this last year. That's all he's done. That's what he wants to do. Under the way this rule's written, how he's never had the commercial license himself. Under the way this rule's written, sounds like to me we would be limiting his opportunity because he didn't have a license the year before. I don't like that. I think it's a way that it would age people out as people pass away. Just the first way. Explain that to me.
Well, I thought of that myself this week, and Eric and I talked about it. There's no minimum age to purchase a commercial fishing license. So if you're in the family, you're probably maybe helping out with your father with a commercial license, and you're in the game already. We have had them purchase as young as teens or so, younger teens. So that was the thinking on it, to answer the question.
But to follow up, if the child has not bought a license, he can't, the next year, he can't go buy his dad's license. He'd have to.
Right. Oh, that's correct. Yeah.
Commissioner Cook?
What about anybody that wants to get into the
That's
fishing?
the point, is that we would like to have people that are in the commercial industry have first crack at this, because they've invested a lot in equipment and gear, and they're waiting to get in. And we're working with the commercial fish community. They don't want to have people come in and maybe come in as novices, tie up a license, and maybe act inappropriately on the water and mess up their reputation. So that was some of the reason for why they didn't want just anybody to come in and buy that license or the permit. Excuse me.
The reality, excuse me, I'm sorry.
Commissioner
Madam
Cox.
Chair, the reality probably is that we're going to be below 40 in the years to come. I mean, it was really close this year. So
We were below.
So this is probably a moot point, because there'll probably be 28 to 30, 35, and then the rest of them will be sold to so I don't think it's going to be as big a problem. And if it gets to be a problem, the commercial fishermen haven't talked about that. They haven't brought that up.
They actually brought up and recommended this 6 month of the prior year to us on our conference call, talking about this proposal.
Okay, now one more question. This is part of the plan to raise the length limit and reduce the number of licenses based on the study. At what point do you update the study to see on Kentucky Lake whether all of this over the last 15, 12 years has worked? 10 years or whatever? What's the plan to update it to see whether what you're doing has worked, and if this could be possibly expanded, or if we're doing the right thing and need to hold?
Well, the plan would be to follow what we've already set out at this 40. We've only recently dropped from 58 to 40. It would be ideal to watch that fishery with approximately 40 people that at that target number, and we've got them set on the number of nets they can run and a season when they can run. So now things are fairly standardized that we can watch it. I think it would serve us to watch it for a few more years at least. We're not getting any requests to do anything different.
Right. Well, the length limit's been in effect more than that. So, I just wonder if there was a talk down the road to see if this is working. I mean, you need to know if it's working. It might be getting worse.
Sure. We are monitoring we've got the data. We're trying to get a grant right now with other states to do a river-wide or regional study on paddlefish. But that aside, when we have our data on Kentucky Lake as recently as what year? 2015. So I would still like to get the commercial fishermen at a pressure point or pressure level of 40 fishermen with the set number of nets and the set season for a few years. Remember, these are long-lived fish. You don't measure a response to this population like you would for crappie, where they bounce back in a few years. So I still feel like we're a few years out from that, but it's something we would definitely do.
Other questions? Commissioner Gardner?
Yeah, just a quick question on the permitting. I see the license is tied to the individual, but is the permit tied to the license, or is it tied to, say, a business? For instance, you have muddy water commercial fishing, and is that permit given to muddy water, and that could be a man and his son, or is the permit tied directly to the license itself?
It's to the commercial fishing license holder. That's an individual. There are wholesale dealers licenses that are different again that can be businesses, but this license is a commercial fishing license, which is for a person.
Thank you.
Commissioner Hulbert, you're recognized.
Thank you. Madam Chairman, I'd like to make a motion recommending passage of Rule 1660-01-30-03.
Commissioner Hulbert moves passage. Is there a second? Second by Commissioner Cook. Discussion, members? Any questions from the public or comments? With that, is a roll call vote required? Great. Any further discussion? We'll call the vote. Madam Clerk, please call the vote.
Chad Baker. Aye. Jeff Cook.
Yes.
Connie King. Yes. Bill Cox. Aye. Angie Box. Yes. Dennis Gardner. Aye. Bill Swan. Yes. Brian McLaren. Aye. Sorry about that. I'm getting used to it. Kent Woods. Yes. James Stroud. Aye. Kurt Holbert.
Aye.
Troy Sanders. Tony Sanders, here I go. And Jamie Woodson.
Aye. I believe that's 13 ayes. The rule passes. Thank you, members. We'll now move to a hearing on Rule 1660-01-31, which deals with commercial musseling. You're recognized. Chief Fisk, when you're ready.
Thank you. Madam Chairman, this is not letting me open this thing. Where's F5 at? Can't see F5. Good guess. Okay. Rule 1660-01-31 is a housekeeping measure to move information that is in proclamation to rule. Specifically, these are procedural things that are best service in rule instead of proclamation. And the exact language that we're moving is coming from Proclamation 1642, which regulates commercial musseling, and it's specifically at Section 6 and 7. And those pieces of proclamation that are moving over are going to find themselves in these titles in the commercial musseling rule. That are going to cover possession and sales of undersized shells, the mussel fee, and importation and exportation rules handling mussels.
Is there a motion on the rule? Motion from Commissioner King, second from Commissioner Baker. Discussion or questions from commission on the rule?
I have one quick question. This moving from a proc to a rule makes it much more difficult to change. Seems to me like counterproductive. I mean, why would we want to make it harder for the agency to do something?
Cheryl, would you introduce yourself?
Oh, sorry.
They'll turn it on.
Cheryl Holtum, General Counsel. It does make it harder, but the statutes tell us what has to be in rule and what has to be in proclamation. This is kind of information that's supposed to be in a rule, and it probably should have been all along. So we're correcting that now and putting it in a rule.
Thank you.
Further questions for members of commission? Any comments from the public? Any further discussion? With that, Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Chad Baker. Jeff Cook.
Yes.
Connie King. Bill Cox. Angie Box. Dennis Gardner. Bill Swan. Brian McLaren. Kent Woods. James Stroud. Kurt Holbert. Tony Sanders. Jamie Woodson.
Aye. 13 ayes, 0 against. The rule passes. With that, members, if we could, how about, would anybody like a bio break before we get back into our committees? We've got still a little bit of work. So we're going to go with 15 minutes, and if you'll join us back in 15 minutes.